And I think that that is missed by so many gurus as well. There are so many pages out there. No one really talks about really what I would term, the in the middle. You see the starting and you see these people who have just made it. There's not a lot of talk about what happens in between. And you're right, there's a lot of strategic planning and a lot of focus. And yes, you 100% can just quit tomorrow and do wherever you want.
Right.
Is that the wisest thing? No, typically not. There's a lot of considerations there. And while you do have to double down and take those risks, it's got to be calculated.
Welcome to Burning the Ships podcast. I'm your host, Jason Seward, and today I have my good friend, Callie Loewen. Welcome to Burning the Ships, Callie.
Thanks, Jason. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, well, we've been talking about this for a while, and we fortunately got to spend some time together few weeks ago in Napa, and we shared the stage together talking about different partnership nuances and stuff like that. So that was a lot of fun, but I'm glad we finally got you on here, and I will turn it over to you in a little bit to kind of get into your intro. But like I do every episode, I got to start it off with my son's joke of the week. So here's JJ's joke of the week. What did the volcano say to its girlfriend? I lava you. So that is JJ's joke of the week. He's got to do a little better than that. That one wasn't that great. So, but Callie, welcome to the show. I am so happy to have you on here. I have gotten to know you through a mutual or mastermind that we're both a part of, Legacy Family, and over the years, I remember I first met you in Nashville, which is your home area now, I think we sat, if I remember correctly, we sat at one of the round tables together, and since then we've stayed pretty close and kind of kept in touch with each other's businesses and progress and things like that. So I'm happy to have you on here to tell your story. You've got kind of a burning the ship story as well, with your career. So I'm excited to get into all that. And what I'll do, Callie, is turn it over to you, let you introduce yourself to the folks, take it wherever you want, and then we'll go from there.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for having me. And I vividly remember Nashville and those discussions at the round table. And so great to get to know you and then to watch just the explosive growth that you've had over the years. It's really something. So thanks for having me. So I'm Callie Loewen from Nashville. I got my start in real estate doing what we would call mega flips, where we were having trouble finding, the lipstick on a pig, the paint and carpet type of deals. And so my team and I would buy a house for $200 a square foot, sell a house for $200 a square foot, and ended up making $60,000 to $90,000 on that spread by taking all of the walls down, building up and building back, and, tripling and quadrupling square footage. So from that process, we learned that new construction was actually an easier way to go. And so we got into the ground up residential development, doing small neighborhoods. And then from there, like most of us do, it kind of started to venture into multifamily. And then, along the way with that process, we brought in the general contracting license in-house, really at first to serve our own company. And then we realized that so many of our investor friends were having similar issues getting projects done on time, on budget, and with excellent quality. So we started marketing that service out to people in our network and really just grew organically to now we have a fully functioning general contracting business. Then, of course, from there, when you're building and selling real estate, it makes sense to also have a real estate brokerage because you're using those services. So we brought in a business partner that I'd met networking several years ago as our broker. And so now we have that service in-house as well.
That's a lot. So you kind of started all of that with when you got into real estate. So let's back up a little bit because I want to hear that, because you did not start. You shared with me offline, like you and your husband's, y'all's first date at 18 years old. Y'all were talking about like your vision and ideas in real estate, but that's not where you started your career path in real estate. So take us back to those days when you were just getting started with whether it's college or your career right after college. What did that look like? And then kind of walk us through those years and the transition into real estate.
Sure. So, when you're in high school, you write those essays. Where do you see yourself in 20 years? I missed every single point. All of them. I was always the girl with the plan, and I followed the plan to a T. And what I said I was going to do, I did. So I declared my major as speech language pathology as a senior in high school, went straight through grad school, got my job right out. Gradually took moves where I was either getting a better schedule or better pay. Just kind of worked. And I loved my job. I loved it. I worked with clients aged 3 months old, straight out of the NICU, needing feeding therapy, all the way up to 103. A man who'd had a stroke and was just having some trouble communicating, his needs and fulfilling, his life, even at 103, just needed a little bit of help. But I think my aha moment was researching salaries and researching different positions. And I kind of realized that straight out of grad school, while speech pathology was an excellent career and a really great paying job, really my upward trajectory was somewhat limited unless I just wanted to completely start my own clinic from the ground up. And that wasn't something that I was really interested in doing. I'd watched people do it and it's tough.
Right.
So transitioning into real estate for about a year and a half, I did both. And for anyone who's listening and has tried to do two careers, you're okay at both of them.
Yep.
And so I just felt like something was missing. So, we wanted to be smart about me leaving a job. So we kept, very careful spreadsheet, looked at our numbers, looked at our expenses. And then in 2018, by April, I had more than replaced every cent that I was going to earn in the entire year. And so Josh, my husband, and I sat down and we said, it doesn't make sense for me to continue to go to work for somebody else.
Right. Yeah. And what was Josh doing at that time? Was he full-time in real estate at that time?
He was. So we had moved to Nashville just on a whim a couple of years beforehand. And so he was working actually in the private sector of finance, which allowed for him to have some flexibility. And then he transitioned out of that fairly quickly. And so he was running the day-to-day with another partner we had at the time. But it got to the point where we needed more hands on deck.
Yeah, got it. So you burned the boat, if you will, and now you're full-time. What you said y'all started with Mega Flip. So I want to walk us through that. I haven't, I've heard you talk about that before, but I want to spend a little bit of time understanding, like, number one, why did y'all start there? Like, what was the attraction to that niche? And then kind of walk us through maybe a high-level example of a deal like that.
Sure. So, you always have the naysayers in every market. We got our start when, the Nashville market was really heating up. And so people were paying top dollar for kind of crummy homes if they were in somewhat livable condition. And so a lot of flippers kind of stepped out of the game like, hey, we can't make money in this. And they were right. If you were just replacing flooring, painting walls, and throwing it back on the market, you weren't making money.
Yeah.
So you got to think outside the box and ask the next question is like, okay, well, how does this work? And so Nashville being an older town, we were buying homes that were built, 1920s, 1930s. They needed a full gut anyway. And we learned that with the city, as long as, part of the original foundation and some of the exterior walls stayed, we qualified as a renovation and not as a new build. So we were able to get through permitting quicker and, do these turns a lot faster than we could with a ground up construction or something that needed a significant amount of, utilities and improvements done to the land. And so we found our sweet spot there. And wholesalers would start bringing stuff to us first because we developed that reputation for closing. We didn't really require inspections because we knew anything under $175,000, it didn't matter the condition because we were going to demolish 95% anyway. And so we didn't even really have to market for deals. They were being brought to us. So started getting some phone calls from other people in the business asking if we were nuts when they saw that we bought for $200 a square foot, a 700 square foot house that everyone in the neighborhood knew it was just horrific. Like you could smell it as soon as you opened the front door.
Yep.
And so we had to explain, no, here's what's going to happen with this. And so we ended up resetting some comps in neighborhoods. And in Nashville at the time, renovations were selling for the same price per square foot or higher than a new build. Because with the renovations tend to have larger lot sizes and a little bit more of appealing end product as far as the actual, yard space. So one of my favorite deals that we did, I know you feel this too. You regret everything you ever sell, right? So
Right. Yeah.
we bought a property for 150,000. The basement had about 2 feet of water and more snakes than we could count.
Oh no.
Yes, yes. And so what we did, we tore this down. I think we took about 9 months on this one. And I don't remember the exact dollar amount that we put into it. But we sold that $150,000 property for 683,000. And our profit spread on that was right around $90,000.
Right. Yeah, that's fantastic. So at that point, and you mentioned earlier, I think we were offline, but you were talking about how you went to HGTV University. I love I love that.
Yeah.
But so was like this idea, what y'all were doing, you were talking about thinking outside the box. Is this something that you and Josh were just thinking, all right, where can we find our niche? Where can we fit in? Or did you have a mentor, or did you take a class or anything to kind of give you this idea to go after it?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned as we were talking, we got into real estate essentially because Josh heard a radio ad and went to one of those seminars, signed up for the next seminar. I went with him to the next one to make sure he didn't buy anything else. That was my sole purpose. And I'll never forget this. I was sitting there, I was sick as a dog. I was like, we're not buying anything. And I will sit here and rot in this chair. I wrote the check. They offered just the systems and processes. Seeing the person on the stage, they're like, hey, if you bought this property and here's what you'd probably do with it. I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I would do. And they're like, great. That's how you lose a lot of money. And so it was kind of that light bulb moment. It's like, okay, yeah, we're on the right track thinking real estate is great. However, just the number of times they said, hey, here's what someone would do and here's why they'd be wrong. I was like, oh yeah, I would have been really wrong. So we realized very quickly the value in these groups with education, and obviously we've continued that with a legacy family. So they had good systems and processes and taught us a lot of key questions to ask. Now the mega flips, that was a little bit big, even compared to what they were doing, but because Josh had that construction background, we were a little bit better positioned to take on some of those items.
Yeah, I love that story of you went to the event to keep him from spending more money and you wrote the check. So I can relate to that. And I don't know if I've shared this story with you before, but when we went to that Nashville event, that was the very first time Bill and I were working in our full-time careers. Like, I mean, it was like game on. We literally had 2 full-time jobs, our pretty demanding career and a pretty big real estate portfolio. But we went there, and it was our first event, our first paid mastermind, right? We had been in the group for a couple months, but this was our first time physically being around in a room that we paid to be in. And flying out there, we had our wives with us, but I told Bill, I said, look, everybody there is going to try to convince us to leave our jobs and go full-time into real estate. We are not going to do it. We're not going to be impulsive. We're going to go there, learn, see what the room's about, try to get some confidence, whatever we need to do, but we're not leaving our jobs yet. So that was on the way out there. In the airport on the way home, I looked at Bill and I said, I'm leaving. Like, I'm putting in my resignation letter. So to your point, like, you go there with this mentality, not me, I'm not doing this. And then, you get, I hate to call it sucked in but it is. Like, I saw so many people that were 2, 3, 10 years ahead of me that had been in my exact shoes, and I just borrowed their belief, and they were kind of my crystal ball, and so I just wanted to share that because it's similar to what you're talking about. So y'all get into the mega flips and you're doing those. At that time, did that eventually dry up, or were y'all looking to like get into more things? What was it? How did that transition go from that to the next things y'all got involved with?
Yeah, great questions. I heard a really good analogy in that original group that I was definitely not going to join and then paid for, myself. That if you have a cash machine and you're putting in $1 and it's spitting out $5 bills, that's great as long as that's still going. You might acquire another machine where you put in $5 and it's spitting out 20s. That doesn't necessarily mean you unplug that first machine. If you've got that rhythm going, and it's still providing for you. So it didn't really dry up for us. So we continued the mega flips. It was for several years, but then from there, with the mega flip, sometimes you tear it down and you're like, oh, this was missing actually half of its foundation. Surprise. That doesn't happen with new construction. And so, as we kind of learned a little bit more about, the city infrastructure and working with development, that was a logical next step, was to take on the ground up new construction projects. So we still kept the mega flips for quite a while, and then started eventually about a 30% mega flips and then 70% new construction. And recently finished up a pretty big acquisition phase that we were in 2021 and 2022, and we're almost 100% new construction right now. But we'll still do some mega flips for other investors or even private homeowners who see that vision as well.
Did you guys at any point did you reach, because we've kind of gone through this in our evolution, is you reach a point where most of the stuff we were doing was transactional in the sense that if we couldn't take a month off, we couldn't take 6 months off. Like we have to keep moving to the next thing in order to keep the cash flow coming in. And that led us to do more buy and holds and longer term stuff, So did y'all, because I know now y'all are in multifamily and a bunch of stuff, did you have that moment at any point where you said, okay, we're only as good as our next flip, or we're only, as good as our next build, or whatever it is. Let's keep these things going, but we have to build something that is sustainable long term without us having to sweat so much doing it. Did y'all reach that point?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So our business partner, Todd, actually found Tim Brott's Commercial Empire online during COVID. And so, as we would have our business discussions, we always knew that we would get into more buy and holds, but the pandemic really kind of pushed us forward probably by about 3 years from what we would have done because the city shut down.
Yeah.
And so there for months, getting permits and, getting inspections was almost impossible. So we're kind of in a holding pattern where it was either, hey, just drag every project out and until things clear up, or we go ahead and start looking to the future now, which is what we did. And so then we entered multifamily acquisitions mode and started getting a lot of those value add multifamily properties.
Yep. Gotcha. And as you go out, and it gets, Tim Brotz uses this a lot. I hear a couple other, folks that are involved with real estate coaching and stuff talk about the different buckets of money. You got your fast, medium, and slow money. And, when everybody's building something, it's just you gotta get the cash coming in, right? But at some point, that cash has to then go into other things, right, that are going to be more sustainable long term. So it's kind of a natural evolution for most real estate investors that are truly trying to build long term. They have that long term vision. They have to get to that at some point. So you're a big goal oriented person. I remember I keep referencing Nashville, but you gave the group, the table I was at with you, I don't know if you remember this, but you gave us 2 goals that you were trying to hit, and they were personal goals. We'll get back to the real estate stuff in a minute, but one was to write a book and the other one was to run a marathon. You remember that?
I do. And that's so funny that you remember Nashville so vividly, because I do too. And with you at that table, I remember you talking about, should I leave this job? And I think I was on team get out of there. So that's funny. But yeah, those were my goals. Good memory.
And the reason, because I remember you saying it, and I told you, I said, I'm not going to let you leave here and just say those goals. And so I kept reaching out to you to see how you were doing, or I'd comment on your social media stuff. And I think you ended up running the marathon, or maybe it was a half marathon.
It was a half, and I did, and it was amazing.
Yeah. How'd the book go?
So it is in process right now. That one was so much slower. But I think really my big takeaway, I think sitting at these roundtable discussions more and more, and I think you needed it and I needed it, you knew what you wanted to do and you knew what you needed to do. And so did I. And it wasn't a matter of, oh, I don't know, can I actually do this? I think we just needed permission.
Permission. That's it.
And that was it. And sometimes, like you said earlier, you just have to borrow somebody else's belief.
Permission, validation, That's a big one. Hearing several other people, like just validating your thoughts and your vision, gives confidence, right? And I bring up the goals because those are two personal goals you had, and I wasn't gonna let you come on here without asking about the book. So I'm glad
I appreciate it. No, you need the
there.
accountability, and it's so great also to be in a room when you put those big goals out there. Sometimes you and among family and friends, like, well, why would you want to do that? Or they might say something like, oh, I could never. When you're in the rooms with like-minded entrepreneurs and people with these huge goals, you don't get that response. It's like, oh, yeah, you should totally do that. And I'm going to make sure that you do.
Right.
And I'll help you.
Yep. And I'll take that a step further. It's also like those same people are quick to, if it's necessary, quick to kind of rein you in on some goals too. And I've had that happen where I've shared goals, and I'll call her out, Kelly Garrett. I shared a goal with her when we launched this fund, and she knew that was just kind of my ego trying to go after a goal that really was not attainable. We didn't have the systems in place yet. And she called me out on it. It's like, no, that's a great goal, but tell me how you're going to get there. Like, tell me your plan to get there. And she made me do that make me walk through an exercise to realize, like, oh yeah, I'm probably not going to get to that goal. So I got to be a little more realistic. And so I think it's important to have those people to do that as well, to kind of, check you when your goal might just be around a big number and ego, but I don't really have a vision of a path to get to that goal, and that was important to me as well. So when you mentioned your husband, Josh, and I want to talk about y'all's partnership because like I said, we're just off of, our last event in Napa with Legacy Family. And like I mentioned, we shared a stage talking about partnership, but I talked about my business partner, Bill. We're not married. We don't live in the same house, so we get to separate from each other at the end of every day. I'd love for you to share some of the nuggets that you shared on stage about how you and Josh have been able to manage and navigate the dynamic of being business partners with the person you love most in the world. So talk us through some of that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, that's great. I think that really knowing ourselves, and sharing thoughts and feelings along the way instead of just kind of trying to go with the flow has been really huge for us. We've been very intentional to do very regular check-ins, like, hey, here's what I'm seeing in the business. Here's some struggles that I'm seeing. Here's some things that are going well. I feel great about this aspect. I'm worried about this, and being just completely transparent and honest about it, rather than trying, just to coast through it and think, oh, okay, well, hope for the best. We'll see how it goes. So that intentionality has been huge. I will say that I struggle with finding that cutoff point. It is very tough for me to switch from work mode into wife mode because it does kind of blend. And I think, a hard stop maybe isn't a realistic way to go. So that's something I'm always liking to listen, to other people's opinions and what they've found success with, because I do struggle. You dropped a nugget on stage that I actually started implementing yesterday. You said that you take your family tasks and kind of personal tasks and you schedule those first.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And work gets to fit around that, because we're not entrepreneurs so that we can be slaves to our businesses. We're entrepreneurs so that we can have that freedom.
Yeah.
And so that was just huge. And again, I feel like I know this, but then hearing someone else, on stage who was very successful, and this is something you've done, and your business didn't crash and burn as a result. In fact,
No,
you had
get better.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. You had one of your biggest closings and one of your biggest business events after you put this in place.
Yeah, I mean, I implemented that probably 2 years ago now, but it was a complete 180 from how I'd always operated, and but it's a big difference there because again, my wife, like she's a teacher. She trusts me. She loves what I'm doing. She's proud of me, but she wants no parts of it. Like, I mean, down to she couldn't tell you within probably 20 houses, how many units we own. You know, she doesn't know where any of the property is, that kind of thing. And that works for us. So for me, I have to create those boundaries of when I'm at home, I'm at home. And when I'm with the family, I'm with the family. It is no business talk. And there's no risk of that bleeding into mine and Katie's conversations because she's not in the business, right? So that makes you've got that extra layer of, and so does your husband, of it's always there, right? Like y'all are 1 minute talking about your next project, and then the next minute trying to have a date night, right? Like that's a very it's a very to navigate that takes a lot of skills, right? And so what I described on stage and what you just described, it helps me be more present with my family who have no involvement with the business. I'll be interested to see how this works for you and Josh. If this helps you guys kind of map out, okay, from 6 to the rest of the evening, we are not talking about business. This is family time. We can go get dinner, go get ice cream, whatever y'all are into, and can y'all stick to that? Right? That's going to be the next challenge. If you structure it and plan it out, that's one thing, but actually sticking to it is another. So I think it's a great strategy. It's just you got to roll with it. So
Yeah, and I think a lot of it has come down. I've tried to be more intentional over the last few months, just noticing when my mind starts slipping to business, or if I start, talking, I'm like, well, what triggered that? How do I get it back on track? And I've kind of come up with a list of questions to distract myself from business that help us just focus on the relationship and have like good conversations. So we might throw it back to like, hey, what are your top 5 favorite places we've ever visited? Or, what are, top 5 favorite memories of, X,
yep.
Y, and Z, just to derail myself. And that's been pretty effective. So hopefully I can get to where I don't have to be derailed and can just shut down. But it's a nice stepping stone.
It is, and what you'll find, I hope you find what I found, and this was unintentional because I didn't realize it was going to work out this way. But when I've started condensing down the amount of time I focused on my business and my task that I have to do for the business, I became 10x more productive with that time. And I shared this on stage, but I'll say it again. Like I was getting accomplished in a 2-hour block that I scheduled on my calendar to do XYZ than I used to get done in 2 days sometimes, because I would just give myself all the room in the world to handle business. Like that came first. Well, now I've got to handle all these other priorities, and I shouldn't say I have to, I get to, like with my family and whatnot. And then I've got to, when I create boundaries and put time urgency around things, I am laser focused. Like nothing's getting in my way, and I'm going to get that task done. So that was kind of like a fringe benefit of changing my schedule and how I ran it. Was I found out I'm way more productive with less time. As simple as that, So, um, so as far as you mentioned, you guys are also brokers, and I know you're very active with that. How active are you with that, representing other people in their purchases and sales and stuff like that?
That is an area I'm actually looking to grow a little bit this year. So in the past, I got my license as an agent solely to buy and sell for our own investment purposes. Fun numbers, I stopped counting when we'd saved $300,000 in commissions just by me having that license. I've learned so much along the way, and I've got an eye for that paperwork. And so I feel like that's a strength that I can actually bring, just the eye to detail and the communication skills. So I do feel like it's time for me to start helping others a little bit more with that, because I do feel that it's a strength of mine with the experience that I have. And so I recently talked with another guy in our mastermind looking to acquire some stuff in Tennessee. We've got a commercial agent on our team that I've known for years. Great guy. We work well together. So looking to expand that a little bit. But in the past, more just, family, friends, and then working for our own deals.
Got it. And are you guys still actively doing some new construction projects as well?
We are. We've got 10 new builds in the Nashville area right now.
That's fantastic. The Nashville market, let's talk about that, because it has been on fire for a number of years, right? Do you see that sustaining? Where do you see things now? I like talking to people local to very specific markets and kind of get their feel, because you hear all the national averages, but what does Nashville look like, you think?
Yeah, for sure. So Nashville, because we're in Tennessee, a state with no state income tax, we still have a lot of people moving in from out of state. So there is a housing need. A lot of them are coming from New York, Chicago, and California, where prices are significantly higher. So they're able to afford still a lot of property, for the prices that they were paying where they came from. So the most recent stats that I read, and I don't remember the exact number, the most homes in Nashville are still selling for right around 90 to 93% of the list price. That's
Okay.
pretty good. And our property values, I have not seen a steep decline. Now, a little bit more on the outskirts, we are seeing a slight lowering of those prices. But in Nashville, we're pretty true to where we were. Now, the days on market have increased by a good bit. It used to be I will forever miss 2020 and 2021.
Yeah.
I didn't pre-list a single house ever, because the one time that I did it, by the time we got through the transaction, it had increased in value from by like $40,000.
Right.
So I never listed anything until the very last second, and stuff was going for 10% over list value in one day. We're not there anymore. Days on market, we're more in that 30 to 90 range, kind of depending on the price point.
Yeah.
Still very healthy.
Yeah,
um
we're seeing similar in our area, and I think that's pretty similar across the country. I just Nashville, to your point of Tennessee being, the advantages from a tax standpoint, is very attractive. And my experience with Nashville is traveling there on leisure for several times. Like, my wife and I love it there, love the music, love the restaurants and all of that. But yeah, I was the last few times I've been, as we're walking around and moving around the city and stuff, my brain is on, like, what's the real estate doing here? Like, and I mentioned to you kind of offline, our company, our lending company, is starting to pick a few different cities that we're going to expand into, and Nashville maybe, and the surrounding markets maybe one of those. Um, so I want to ask you, so you put on your social media, and I encourage we're going to drop your social media links in the notes so people can find you and follow along. But you put a lot of quotes up, and I love it. I love your quotes. But I'm gonna read a couple to you that you've recently shared.
Okay.
And I want you to get you to elaborate on them a little
All
bit.
right.
So, and this was just today. When everything seems to be going against you, remember that the airplane takes off against the wind, not with it.
That hits home in this market, and I think for the past 2 or 3 years, it has not been easy to be in real estate. It just hasn't. And we're a younger company, and I think anytime you're starting to build something, you encounter so much resistance. It's hard to start something from the ground up, and a lot of what is hard is what's happening right here. And so, to your point of borrowing other people's faith, and you know, just to keep that trudge along and to keep pushing. Yeah, airplanes do get a lot of resistance, but then when you get that upward motion, then you just take off. And I've started to feel that recently. I've doubled down on my networking over the last 3 years. And there have been so many instances, really in the last 2 to 3 months, where connections have been made and potential deals have been brought and opportunities for growth. And like, along the way, you go to all these events, you're like, has this done anything? Or am I just going to something every Tuesday to be going to something every Tuesday? And so it's been incredible to see some of these connections form and referrals to take place and starting to get that lift. So that one hit home really close today. So I knew I had to post that one.
I agree, and what it makes me think of, and kind of hearing you talk through it as well, well, Tim Bratz talks about this a lot, the hockey stick growth, and so many people, it's gradual, sometimes flat, but so many people quit right about here, and a month later it would have been there, and we've experienced that recently in our business where, I wouldn't say it was slow when we've now, with the lending fund, we've been in business 2 years now. The first year and almost a half, it was not, with the way my brain is wired, it was not going at the speed I wanted it to go, right? So I was very frustrated. Thankfully, I've got a business partner that's very patient. Bill is very patient. He sees where it's going and all of that. So I'm out here planting seeds, and I can make and this we grind it through the wind, right? So October, I remember October of last year, 2024, I gave a presentation to a small group at a meetup. And I remember we had just taken in a decent sized investment. We were at about $5 million under management of investor capital. Not where I wanted to be, but I was proud that we had gotten to that much. Fast forward to today, by probably the end of this month, we'll be around 17 million. So a year and a half went like this, frustrated, planting the seeds, not seeing much, taking off into the wind, to your point, and then boom, it's kind of hit that hockey stick growth, and we're realizing it. And I love that quote, man. It's funny you posted it today, because it that's exactly what that's saying,
Yeah.
right? You have to trudge through a lot of resistance to ultimately finally take off into the sky. And that one, I love it. So um, this kind of goes along with the burning the ships mindset. Everything changes when you decide that quitting isn't an option. So you went all in 2018, or around about then, and haven't looked back. But you did so. You had to have that mindset. So do you want to talk about that a little bit?
It is so scary, and it is so necessary. And I don't know if you experience this too. There are still days when I'm like, what have I done? What am I doing? But again, with the burning the ships, I remind myself that Josh and I had 6 figures sitting in the bank, and we were going to do something big, and we dumped it all into our first deal. We just dumped it all, maxed out every single credit card.
Yep.
And when you do that, you have to succeed. If you quit, then you are done. Sometimes, and it's tough, but sometimes the only way through is through. And if you give up, like we were just talking about, kind of goes hand in hand with the other quote. If you give up here, you're going to miss here.
Yeah.
And just knowing that it's coming, and again, just staying in tune, and you're in connection with other people who've experienced this also, who can look at you and say like, hey, same thing in my business, but if I would have quit, look what I would have missed out on. And just relying on all of those stories from other people who didn't give it up.
Yeah.
So helpful.
Yeah. And I think part of this mindset of burning the ships, I'm curious to get your take on this, because yes, I burned the ships on a very specific career, right? I walked away from more money than I ever thought I'd make in a job, and I left that sitting there to go pursue something else. And it's kind of a no plan B mindset, but at the same time, I trusted my resourcefulness enough to know that, yes, I burned a boat, but I can build another boat. And if this boat sinks, I can build another boat. And I have the resources around me where I can lean on mentors and whatever I need to do to just keep pivoting until I find a boat that floats, that I love, and it will ultimately get me to my end goal. And that was the mindset. I don't really view it as some people think, where it's all in or nothing. I'm either going to make it or I'm going to die trying. That's true to some degree, but I might make it in 5 different ways than I ever dreamed about when I first burned the ships. Does that make sense?
I love that. I have not necessarily thought of it in those terms, but I think that that's perfect. I mean, and in fact, you could build yourself another fleet.
Yeah, exactly.
When you build a boat, you can build a raft, you can swim, you can go back to shore and reassess and build something even bigger. And I love that. And that's very much where we are. I never thought that we would have a full construction division.
Right.
But it turned out, had we not made that shift, and thank goodness we do, and it's allowed us to, grow our portfolio in a time when the market has not been really favorable, but because we had, that other, raft that we built, didn't consider that a possibility, didn't plan for it, but it's been amazing. So I love your analogy there. It's great.
Yeah. And I get asked quite a bit. I get a lot of messages, when because especially local to me, a lot of people have watched my evolution as, like build a career in a great W-2 job, leave that, go into real estate. And no matter how much I'd say otherwise, they get this impression that I literally went flat broke to try to build something. It wasn't that. I worked in real estate for 10 plus years trying to build something that was decent enough to give me the confidence to cut the strings on that. And like, I don't want the message to be to every aspiring real estate entrepreneur or anybody trying to get into their own business, but they're working hard at a job. I don't want the message to be just burn it all down and go build it. It has to be a very systematic process, right? Now, you can do that. Some people do. They go from way up here down to zero and build it way back. But I don't advise anybody to do that, right? You got to be strategic with it. You have to have a plan, and the mindset. Yeah, you might want to think of it like no plan B. You better have a plan B. You better have, or the resources available to come up with a plan B. So I just I want to be clear with that, because I think a lot of people confuse the burning the ships messaging around just burn it all to the ground and figure it out. It's not that at all, right?
No, not at all. And I think that that is missed by so many gurus as well. There are so many pages out there. No one really talks about really what I would term, the in the middle. You see the starting and you see these people who have just made it. There's not a lot of talk about what happens in between. And you're right, there's a lot of strategic planning and a lot of focus and yes, you 100% can just quit tomorrow and do whatever you want.
Right.
Is that the wisest thing? No, typically not. There's a lot of considerations there. And while you do have to double down and take those risks, it's got to be calculated.
Yep. Yeah, and you're a great story of someone who, like, literally when you were building your SLP career, you weren't obsessing about real estate, right? I mean, you slowly started learning about it, and then you got involved with it, and you started building it. But early on, you were not intending to build a real estate empire, right? That was not the goal.
No,
And,
not at all.
yeah.
Not at all.
And so I want that to be a message to folks. Like, it doesn't matter what you're doing right now. If you're intrigued by, it doesn't have to be real estate either, but another type of business, start learning about it. Start educating yourself about it. Dip your toes into it in some way. Help somebody that's doing it, like offer your services to help on weekends and nights and stuff like that, just to get a taste for it. And if it's something that resonates with you, then build it and start building towards that. But and you're a great story of somebody who did that. But I want to ask you this. I talk a lot on my weekly ramble episodes about a lot of the skills that I learned in my previous career, like from a sales standpoint and a leadership standpoint, how well they're helping me build what I'm doing now. So do you have your experience in your former career, do you have some things that you can lean on from that experience that have helped you build this business that you have now?
I have been shocked by how much from the degree that I thought I was no longer using and the career that I thought that I set aside has transitioned and really helped us grow this business into what it is. And I think a lot of what I learned, I worked with a lot of fairly complex cases where a child would be brought in by their parents. They might be completely nonverbal. And we're having communication meltdowns, and we've got a child who speaks no words, and the goal is for this child to be completely fluent and communicative. And the one question I think that I've learned, from being a speech pathologist, that I would always ask myself first has translated so well. The question I ask in any difficult situation, whether it be with a contractor, whether it be with a deal, whether it be something in real estate, is, okay, what can we do? What can we do? Where are we right now today? And what skills or, what is available to us to tap into? It can be so hard when you've got big goals in business or in life to see it as, the child who's brought in. It's like, well, of course we know all that he can't do. What skills does he have and how do we build on that? And so that's been just incredibly helpful.
I love that. That ties into I don't know if I've released it yet or not, but I have a weekly ramble episode on that, me having that epiphany in my previous career of leaning more into people's strengths and building those up rather than trying to fix their weaknesses, right? The weaknesses, that's tough. And when you talk about the the type of child and children you were trying to help, and I have not personal experience. My wife was a special education teacher for years, and so she dealt with a lot of, and she would come home so energized some days when one of the kids like made eye contact with her. Like she'd been 6 months just trying to get the kid, an autistic kid that is nonverbal, but she'd come home in tears because that little kid made eye contact with her for 10 seconds today, right? So like that was, and to hear you tell that, I remember her getting excited about these little milestones, and making that is so beautiful, making that analogy from that to business, you know, learning to get excited about the little milestones and not always ignoring all that because you're still not hitting the big goal that you have. So I love, love, love that. So, yeah, that's great. So what does the future look like for you guys? And let me get a little more specific with that question. Give me kind of what you're working on now, like what y'all have down in the pipeline and what you're working on, where you see it in 5 years, and then where you see things in 25 years.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Throwing it back to the high school essay, where do you see
yeah,
yourself? And let me get all this wrong, and we can listen to it in a few years and be like,
there
oh,
you
she
go.
missed them all again.
Perfect.
So right now, what we are working on is looking at all of our portfolio globally. So we've got the contracting business, we've got the brokerage, we've got a number of doors, buy and hold. Um, so immediate goals to finish up a lot of our new builds, and a number of those we're going to hold for rentals. Let the market stabilize a little bit. I think I could sell them, in 3 months for about 500,000. Knowing what I know about the market, I think in 3 to 5 years, those are going to be worth 550 to 600,000.
Okay.
So we'll hold tight, kind of build a little bit more in our local portfolio of single family rentals and kind of ride out and let the market stabilize a little bit. So same probably with our multifamilies, get those stabilized, get some better loans in place, and kind of just grow that equity. All of these things we're wanting to bring together into a large portfolio and then actually give this as an offering. So for our investors and equity partners, this would spread the risk across a wide variety of properties and types of businesses. And for us, that would be an opportunity to get some cash back in order to finish projects more rapidly and then acquire even more real estate. So helps us immediately, helps us and our investors in the long run, and even giving them some opportunities to bring their own properties into this portfolio and have some ownership as well, just so that we can all mitigate our risk and then maximize our returns in the long run.
I love
So
that.
that's the goal. This is kind of something that's been building in our minds for about the last year or so. And so now really doubling down on the processes, starting talking, to lawyers and what do we need to have in place to make this happen.
Do you envision a point, whether it's 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, but what does the word retirement mean to you?
Retirement means that I could go somewhere for 6 weeks and my income would not be affected. Um, I think retirement to me used to just be like, I don't work anymore. Um, I get so excited about so many things. I had a good friend, he summed this up really well. He's a producer. He's written, for movies and commercials. And he said that he was telling me about this friend who doesn't really know what she wants to do with her life. And the way he summed it up was so beautiful. It's like, I just felt this. He said, he's like, Callie, I'm the opposite. I'm going to die before I get to do all of the things that I want to try. And so retirement no longer to me looks like, the day that I no longer have a job and stay at home. It's just where I can follow, any creative ideas and have the time freedom and the money to just pursue those and see what happens.
Yeah, I love that. I'm very similar. I used to, and early on when we first started the podcast, I used to ask guests about do they get more excited about a destination or the journey they're on, right? That was a pretty common question I asked. And I've completely shifted in my thing. Like when I worked my corporate career, all I could think about was I can't wait till I retire. When I retire, I'm going to play all the golf and hunt and go to the beach and all this stuff. And like, it was, I'm going to grind for the next 40 years so I can eventually do that, where I may not even have my health at that point to do those things. Right. So now my mindset, again, another thing that I've done a complete 180 on is now I want to create a journey that I'm so passionate about that I don't ever want it to end, right? That's the destination. And for me, that looks like I'm going to always have to have a puzzle to solve. When I'm 100 years old, now that puzzle may change from having to do certain things to earn an income through the business. And all that could be passive at that point, or I may sell it. But the new puzzle could be charitable. It could be how our coaching, helping mentor people. But I'm always going to have something. And I don't know that I love a vacation. I love the idea of spending 6 weeks working from Maui, right? That would be amazing. But I'll never be able to every day sit by a pool with a drink in my hand and not think about chasing something, right? I don't think I'll ever reach that point. So I agree, with how you put that 100%. Does Josh have similar views around that?
Yeah, we're pretty aligned on that. And actually, he really shifted my mindset on this too. He is good about finding those windows of time because we have essentially these baby businesses. They require a lot of time and a lot of attention.
Right.
But there are moments where at 2 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon, you might not actually have something scheduled until the following day. And he's so good about seizing that opportunity. He's like, I'm going to the golf course,
Great.
or
Yeah.
I'm just going to take a minute. And for me, it was so different growing up. My parents were teachers. And so, that schedule is very regimented. It's very predictable. And for me, I always had this anxiety around is like, it's 2 o'clock on a Tuesday. Well, let me make up some sort of task that I've got to do because this
Yeah.
is what we do.
Right.
And I'm a work in progress.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but that's good that y'all have those two different mindsets to kind of balance each other out. Because if he didn't have you, he might spend every day on the golf course, and if you didn't have him, you may never do anything for fun. So that's a good balance there. So, Callie, I'm glad we finally got to do this. We covered a lot of ground here. I'm so impressed with what you guys have going on. I mean, I was impressed the day I met you with everything you had going on, and your poise and composure. I don't know how you are off camera or off stage, but you seem to handle everything in stride with a lot of composure. And I think that, I know that provides a lot of value to your business, right? That mindset and your approach to it. And I've got a lot to learn from that. I get very energetic about things, right? Good and bad, So I'm a work in progress there. But like I said, I love meeting new people, learning what they have going on, and just watching the growth. And I love those same people cheering me on, right? And that we're in this community, which is Legacy Family, and there's so many other communities out there. But my advice to everybody is always lean into some type of community. And a lot of times that might have to be a paid community, depending on what niche you're in. So I kind of want to end with my last question being around that. How big of a role, and you can go wherever you want with this, has not just Legacy Family, but just mentorship, coaching, community, all of that played in your confidence, your success, and everything y'all have built?
Absolutely huge. And I think I would sum it up with you get what you put in.
Yes.
Whether that's a paid group or and I go to tons of events locally that are free. I think my best advice would be, yes, get in a group and stay in it consistently. Going once or twice, it's difficult. You're going to feel like a fish out of water. There are so many rooms where I had convinced myself that I didn't belong. And so many times that I would take a step back and I'm like, honestly, I knew that didn't work. Well, of course it didn't work. I didn't go. Um, and so you got to kind of be your own cheerleader sometimes. But once you start showing up consistently and looking for that value that you can give to others, not just looking for the next sale or the next, group that you can be in front of, but really looking at, okay, who is growing their business? How can we do this together? Because, keeping in line with the ships theme here, a rising tide raises all ships. And so just constantly being in front of people, continue to show up and look how you can raise the tide and bring people with you and they'll return.
100%. And Legacy still remains the biggest community I'm a part of. Like you, I'm connected very locally to me with everything. So, but as far as like a national community, that's my biggest one. And you're 100% right. I get so much out of that group because I try to put as much in as I can, right? I have tried, there's not, maybe some new members I haven't been able to connect with, or maybe they weren't at the event, but there's very few people in Legacy Family that I have not connected with. Like I've connected with everybody. Like I've gone out of my way to introduce myself, to learn more about them, to help them learn more about me. And now I've got a new cheerleader and they have a new cheerleader, right? And that's what I get out of these groups. But I see so many people leave groups like this because maybe they think they're not getting what they need out of it. Well, it's not just going to happen by osmosis. I can't go sit at a table with Kelly Garrett and expect to have a fund like Rehab Wallet, right? I've got to put in the work, and to extract value from a group like that, I have to add some value. And you do a phenomenal job with that. I try to do the best I can with that. And I think the core folks in groups like that believe in that. And that's why we're, to your point, the tide's rising and all the boats are rising with it. So, yep. So, Callie, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up. Before we do you have anything else you want to add? Tell folks how they can reach you or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, first of all, before I do all that, thank you
Yeah.
so much for this. Like, I love hopping on, and it's not lost on me the faith that you put out there in asking me to come on and represent something that you have worked so hard to build. So I appreciate that, and that really means the world. So thank you.
Yep.
And I want to continue, to give value to other people. So I can be reached online. It's Callie Walker Loewen on Instagram and also on Facebook. I think my email address, maybe we can post that somewhere. That's Callie@southernlegacy.co. Anything that I can do for anyone who is looking to get into the Tennessee market, my brokerage, Oyster Real Estate Advisors, I would love to help out. We're very investor friendly. Also work with typical buyers and sellers. Would love to help out in any way we can there. And if anyone has gotten any value from these conversations that we've had, I love to speak at networking events, whether that's virtually or live, and would be glad to discuss that with anyone who might need some help in that area.
I love it. So we're going to drop all that, like I said in the notes. So people listening, if you want to connect, all of her information, or just, if nothing else, go follow Callie, because like I mentioned earlier, she's very active on social media with good content there. Again, I appreciate everything you just said. I appreciate you coming on here and adding so much value, right? So I approach all of these episodes, all of my interviews, and you were very comfortable with it, but some people aren't comfortable having an unscripted conversation for an hour, right? So I never know where I'm going to go with these things, but to come on here for me to put you on the spot with some questions and make you think through it and provide an answer on the spot like that, you did a fantastic job, and I appreciate you taking the time to do it.
Well, thank you so much. I will tell you, my early career was working with people who couldn't speak back to me. So this is quite the 180, and it's a nice little change.
Right. Yeah, I had, it was funny. We'll wrap up here in a second, but I had a guest that I really wanted to come on, and we weren't able to work it out because they could not do it unscripted. They needed to see 20 or so questions I was going to ask, I appreciated their anxiety around that, but I said I just can't. For me, that's not my communication style. I don't work very well when I'm reading questions. So it's not authentic to me that way. I know it is for others, but so I know it can be difficult sometimes to not know what I'm going to ask, but that's just the way we roll here.
I love it.
Yep. But Callie, I appreciate you. Appreciate you, all your value you bring. I look forward. I unfortunately won't be at the next Legacy event. I have a conflict with the schedule, but I'll see you at the one after that. And we will definitely keep in touch. And the next time I'm going to get you on here is around whenever that book releases. So you have my word. When you finish that, you let me know the release and we'll get you on here and help promote that as well. So.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks a lot for joining me. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Burning the Ships. I want to give a special thanks to our sponsor, 608B Capital, helping real estate investors secure fast, reliable funding to fuel their boldest moves. If you're ready to take your investing to the next level, visit 608bcapital.com to learn more. If you found value in today's episode, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but it also helps us reach more people who are ready to burn the ships and commit fully to their goals. And don't forget to share the episode with someone who needs that extra push to take bold action. I'll leave you with this. Burning the ships isn't just about removing the option to retreat. It's about unlocking the courage to charge forward. No matter the odds, the past is behind you and the future is yours to conquer. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time on Burning the Ships.